And here we are. Welcome to the Refinery, your favorite 2 hours on Tuesday nights. I'm Leslie, and we've got a special guest for us later this evening. That'll be John Gabriel. He's joining us in about an hour. And we've got our regulars here, JD and Felicia and Corey and Andy and Ryan and the cartoon detective. I'm having technical difficulties, so if I have to drop out at some point, don't take it personally. It's technology betraying me and all that kind of stuff. But it happens. Anyway, what do we want to talk about today, kids?
Well, you have like a stack of notes that you've been compiling for the past week. So I think we should go and talk about that police story first.
Yeah, this was a very disturbing thing that happened now probably about 2 weeks ago, and I've been very focused on be nice and trying to be the conservatives that people will want to join. You know, we have to be an appealing group of people in order to recruit others to our club, and wanting to get rid of the anger and get rid of the hatred. And there was in the midst of all of this, or shortly after all of this Ferguson stuff, there was a great article posted by a gentleman who took an opportunity. He apparently thinks like us and thought, you know what, in order for the world to be nicer, I have to start. It has to start with me. And he took the initiative, and then he told his story. He was driving around through town, and there was a police officer pulled over outside of his vehicle, I guess, walking around the town or something. And so this gentleman pulled his own vehicle over, got out, walked up to the police officer, and initiated a conversation. Hi, nice to meet you. I'm Billy Ray. I live in your neighborhood. I just thought I'd say hi, thanks for what you're doing, wanted to meet a police officer. And he said, the police officer was skeptical at first, here's this guy walking up to me and I don't know what it is, but he found a way to communicate to the cop that he wasn't a threat, and they had a lovely discussion, and it turned out that the police officer was really glad to have had that discussion and to have had the opportunity to meet and interact with the public in a positive way. Because if you think about it, police officers don't do that very often. They're in their cars, we're in our cars, and maybe we wave at each other at the stoplight, but most of the time if I see a cop, I'm going to be checking my seatbelt and checking to make sure I used my blinkers, and I'm going to be paranoid, and I'm going to try to get out of his way as quickly as possible. And they know that. But really the only people that they get out of the car and meet are criminals or victims. So they tend to have kind of a skewed vision of the world that the entire town is full of criminals and victims, and they hate everybody. I would imagine that if all I ever interacted with was bad people and my own coworkers, that I would think the world was full of bad people and my coworkers, because that's all you see. And so this civilian gentleman took the opportunity to meet the cop and let the cop know there are people out here who actually like police officers and are law-abiding citizens. And it was a beautiful, wonderful thing. And oh, by the way, the police officer was white and the gentleman was black. That was irrelevant to me, but it may be relevant to some in the story. So anyway, the guy shared this story and said, you should all try this. And I thought, this is a great, happy story. I'm going to share this and encourage others. Maybe somebody else will decide to go talk to a cop, and it's going to remind myself to go talk to a cop and to say hey, and be the change we want to be. Wasn't that the phrase? Yeah, just use that.
Be the change you want to see in the world.
Be the change you want to see in the world. If you want cops to be nicer, be nice to them. So I shared it out. To be fair, the majority of comments I got and reshares were, what a great idea, this is awesome, this is terrific. But unbelievably, there were more than a few negative comments. You should never do this, this is horrible, all cops are bad. Somebody else reshared it by saying, I agree, I'm not one to say every police officer is bad, but there's a culture within law enforcement that needs to be changed. Well, that's a negative within the positive. He was saying he agrees with the story and that it's a good thing to do, but he felt like maybe to retain his libertarian street cred or something, he had to also slam law enforcement, because otherwise he would be considered, I don't know, a fan of the man or something. So, that's that kind of left-handed compliment that can kind of destroy your point of view.
That I just need to step in and say that kind of I'm more libertarian than you, I'm more conservative than you, the kind of it goes back to our discussions of point scoring.
Point scoring, right? Yeah.
It's like, dude, you don't need to have the high score every single thing that you post. Not everything needs to be Sarah Palin sitting on a tank, smoking a cigar, with an AK-47 in her other hand, with an eagle perched on her head. That it doesn't have to be.
Though that would be awesome, man, awesome.
But it doesn't have to be that. We can be more than just the talking points from time to time, and this is clearly getting beyond. That's the whole point of this exercise, is to get beyond the idea of the stereotype, beyond the idea that all cops are evil or whatever. Whoever has that idea, and I certainly, I've been against the militarization of police in these small suburban towns, but that by no means makes me a cop hater. I mean, I love cops. I'm related to a former police officer, and it's just I can't imagine having anything but the utmost respect for police. There are certain times when you put police in bad places with not enough training, with gear that they aren't, that isn't helping them, that's only making the situation worse. It's a situational thing. It's not a we hate all police because it's not. It's in certain situations things get out of hand, and does every single police organization need to have an MRAP and all the fun little smoke grenades and gas canisters that they have?
I'm in the market if they want to offload one of those, though. I'm just saying.
Yeah. I get tired of people feeling that they have to, I don't know, qualify themselves before every comment. I agree that this is a happy story, though I'm not a fan of cops. Just say you agree this is a happy story. And then if someone is stupid enough to come at you and say, that must mean you love all cops, then you are well within your reason to say, no, that's nowhere near what I said. Your assumption is off base. When you preempt their argument with your counter-argument and say, I really like this story, though I'm not a big fan of cops or whatever, you're giving credibility to their outrageous assumption that you love all cops. You see what I'm saying here? Just state your point.
I don't understand, like, when you say, when somebody would say, oh, well, you must love all cops as a pejorative. That seems kind of silly.
Right. It's like retarded.
If you were to say, you love the police state, if you like a story about cops, then I can understand, and then the correct response is laughing in their face, because that's the most outlandishly stupid extrapolation of a story that I've ever heard. So,
and we find that we do a lot of that. Not necessarily maybe as much as the left does, where they all are automatically labeling support for one person as a support for a policy, or they twist that to mean that if you support X person, then you're all about date rape or whatever. Those ridiculous things. I don't want to see that happen on the right. And there are elements of the rightward end of the spectrum that do that spend time drawing boxes around people, and you have to fit in one or the other. And it makes it so hard when we isolate ourselves to work together. And we're going to kill ourselves doing that if we don't correct it the way you're talking about, nip it in the bud.
Well, and I think we also tend to weaken our own arguments. If there's a good quote from George Bush about something, just present, this is a good quote from George Bush, and let the conversation be about, this is a good quote from George Bush. But so many people on our side are eager to curry favor with everyone, or they're afraid of being tarred with some brush as a Bush fanatic or something, that they will start out the conversation with, I'm not a big fan of George Bush, but this one thing he said was smart. Well, then you allow the conversation to be about how you're not a fan of George Bush and how George Bush was a bad person. You're opening the door and you're leading the conversation against the point that you were trying to make. Because you were trying to make a point about George Bush, and you're leaving it open to be a conversation about how you hate George Bush.
As an example, I really want JD to spend the next 5 minutes reeling off great comments by Rick Santorum.
Exactly.
He's a very snappy dresser. he is just, but no, I
believe he's a very good father to all of his children.
Absolutely, I'm completely confident that he is a great dad, and that
you guys aren't coming up with quotes. You're coming up with attributes.
Yes, that's true. That's true, and I would have to do some research to find some Rick Santorum quotes. I'm sure.
JD, if you research well enough, what you can do is simply draw words out of random sentences and assemble them the way you want.
I do have a year's supply of ellipses that I won, so
the ... and ...
I will put
God ... bless ... America.
I will use that. I'll put that to good use, and somehow find a really, really excellent Rick Santorum quote. But I'm sure he has them. I am absolutely sure he has them.
Leslie, I agree with everything you're saying. I think it's wonderful. I just wanted to make JD sweat while applying it.
Oh, I think it's a good point. And anytime we can make JD sweat, it's a winning kind of thing that we've done here. We've done God's work.
It just makes me feel better to bring him down. I feel better about me.
And that's what matters to you.
That's exactly.
I'm a very small individual, and this helps me.
That's exactly what the conservative movement is all about. It's all about putting people down.
See, this is why it disturbs me when people are so negative all the time, and they'll take positive stories and twist them into a negative, because laughing and making fun of each other is just so much more fun and interesting, you know?
Yeah. Particularly when it's me that's being made fun of or put into an awkward position with Rick Santorum quotes on the line.
Obviously.
Speaking of putting people down and stuff, I know we talked about that on the last episode of the Refinery, but while we're here, it just happened, so we might as well. We should probably talk about it. Is that Andy? You wrote a piece on thepartychoice.com yesterday. So.
Oh yeah.
You did that, didn't you?
You mean on the morality thing?
Yeah.
By preaching morality at people.
Yeah, by beating them, I think was the.
By eating them? I must have misheard that.
Beating them.
No. We're Christians. We don't eat. I'm a Christian. I don't eat people. I beat them.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Them.
For goodness' sake, don't start applying sick things toward me. I mean, I only beat them.
Yes.
A lot.
Well, if they need it.
Yeah.
It's so much fun.
I confess to not having made the time to read the article. So, Andy, catch me up.
In a nutshell, what we did was, I did not address your guys' comments last week. I kind of went off on my own tangent. But dealing with the situation with the Hollywood starlets who were posing nude and got their pictures hacked and then put out on the internet. I do not believe, and the question was, does that provide a good time for Christians to moralize and basically say, see, young people, here's another reason why you shouldn't expose yourself like this, because somebody could pick it up and look what they may do with it, and then it'll be really embarrassing and so forth. That is teaching morality by fear. When Christians teach morality by fear, what they're basically saying is that is our only sales pitch. We want you to fear not doing what we do. And I think that's the wrong way to teach morality. And so what I did is I used it as an opportunity to, first of all, say, don't do that. And secondly, say, look, there are great ways to teach morality to young people. First of all, understand that they're already much more moral than you think. They already wear clothing. They cover themselves the vast majority of the time. Why do they do that? Do they do it because of, they don't want to be judged by people like me? No, they do it because they want to be covered most of the time. They want to actually be able to engage in normal conversations with people without those people checking them out up and down constantly. They actually want to have a casual life to some degree.
That's impossible. That's not what I hear on the radio and on the TV. I hear that youngsters are all terrible perverts and horrible people, and they are what's going to destroy the world. That's what
I believe that children are our future.
I don't. I've met them.
Teach them well. Let them lead the way.
Oh.
Yeah. Guys, let me give you an example. I work with G-girls. These are sexy dealers. I worked with them tonight. That's what I do at the casino. I run all the areas, and one of the areas I run is the blackjack pit. And these girls are scantily clad and very attractive, and guys come and play at their tables so they can look at them while having cards dealt to them and so forth. Okay, these girls do themselves up when they're at the table. When they're walking in for their shift, they look like slobs. They're relaxed, they're in loose clothing, they're, sweatshirts and this kind of stuff, in the back room, in the dressing room, which for whatever reason, by the way, I hate this. Our manager's office is in the G-girls' dressing room.
Oh, God.
And I have not been sued yet. I love that. I keep my door shut all the time. I live in fear. No, they're actually very sweet. But so these girls, but they come in frumpy. Okay, why? Because they want to be casual. Life isn't a show. Young people are much more moral than they think they are. Okay? Mm-hmm. And
they haven't used that language to define their behavior.
Right.
The language of morality, and because they don't get as much religion as people used to, and we don't talk about religion in the public sphere.
Right.
If people went around and said the word morality every 5 seconds, it would be like John Lithgow in Footloose. I mean, the language barrier is a big deal. I'm sorry, what was that, Andy?
Which was a great performance, by the way.
Sure.
He was wonderful. And by the way, you guys ever play Back to Bacon?
Yes, several times.
I just wanted to know. Okay. Try it with Kermit the Frog. That's hard. So what I like to do is you read the article, didn't you, JD? And I was going off on explaining morality to young people. Did you hear judgmentalism, or did you hear reasons that they would actually want to be moral?
I've heard reasons that they would want to be moral. I didn't hear, it wasn't judgmental. But I also don't think it was an article directed at young people. I don't think it was an article directed necessarily at the people that are being scolded. You were directing this article towards the group of people who might be doing the scolding.
Right. What I was doing is equipping. And
yes.
The basic idea was to say, look, when you go to them, you don't scare them into morality. You show them why they would want morality. Number one, because they already demonstrate they like it. They like covering up most of the time. They like not being on display all the time. And when they do put themselves on display, why do they? And it all comes down to value. When, the more pieces they take off of clothing they take off, or the further they go in sex, rounding first base, second base, third, and whatever. They're doing that because, yes, they enjoy it. They enjoy the attention and they enjoy sex. Okay. But there's this little nagging thing in the back of their mind thinking all along the way, if I stop at this point, what will he think of me? If I reverse course, okay, I went to second base, what if we don't do second base next time? And definitely not third. If I wear more clothing next time, will guys still click on me on the internet? No, they won't. Okay? It's always got to be more and more and more. And so while they're enjoying the attention and they're enjoying the experience of, of sex or of, heavy petting and all that, they it is undeniable that they realize, if I stop or hold off at any point, this person's going to devalue me. They're going to like it a lot less, which means, what am I doing? I'm earning my value. I'm doing this so they will value me more. You know what I mean? And that's where they get the feeling of being cheap. And I say, look, I don't have to teach you morality. You already know it. You already feel it. You don't want to feel cheap. Yeah, you like doing those things, of course. But the problem is, until you have an absolute commitment from that person, and that's why we Christians talk about marriage. We talk about marriage. Why? When the ring is on, that person's made an absolute commitment to you for life, thus taking away anything to earn by doing these things. And at one point I say, a great irony of life is that the old ball and chain becomes intimacy, a great form of intimacy with no strings attached. It's wonderful. Okay? We Christians aren't here to judge you. We're here to tell you how special you are. You take it from there. Does that make sense?
It does, and that whole judgy thing is something that we've been trying to work on for a while here on the refinery, and it's hard to get it through the heads of a lot of people that we don't need to scold people over these pictures, because we kind of get that part already, and that's besides the fact that these people there was a crime that went on. I mean, that was the part of the story that we talked about
Sure.
before, was that there was an actual crime that went on, and this is private property that was stolen. But getting to the morality part of it, we don't really need to talk about it in that way, in the scolding way, because people get it. People already get it. It doesn't need to be gotten into again.
No, you people need Jesus.
I like to be as Jesus as I possibly can. And I like to say Jesus. I actually use Jesus as I Jesus things. I Jesus every day.
This is going to this could be taken completely out of context, and no one is ever going to want to be on this show ever again.
I've already written down all the timestamps. We're good.
Oh my goodness. But the more Jesus than you discussions, which do occur, Andy, and I'm sure that you've seen them, where people were, and it's absolutely ridiculous. To see these go back and forth on Facebook or on Twitter or wherever, where people are making these claims, and it makes no sense to me that we're having people who shouldn't be fighting, who should be on the same team, just go back and forth over no, I understand this stuff better, no, you're wrong, no, I'm right, no, all that BS, and it's really annoying that we don't focus on the stuff that we, are allied on, and we instead focus on who has the, better connection with certain parties.
Yeah, I mean, to simplify everything I was kind of saying, first of all, I totally agree. There's a lot of wisdom that can be gained from what happened with the Hollywood people. Don't put yourself out there. I mean, it's the modern age, modern technology. It's going to get out. That's not moralizing. That's just wise. Okay. But I don't give that whole line and spiel when I talk to young people, but I do this. I say, look, you obviously wear clothing because you want to be covered most of the time. And when you take off more and more, or when you get into sex and stuff like this, besides liking the attention and that, I always ask this: What happens when you stop or reverse course or not take off as much clothing next time or not let him go as far next time? Will they value you as much, or will they be frustrated? And will they show it? And will this hurt you? That means you're earning value. And I'm just trying to tell you, your value should never be earned. It should only be accepted.
Yeah.
And young people, they do get that.
And imagine how transformative an approach like that would be for conversations like that across all kind of political conversations that we're having that deal with the social issues, the morality issues. Imagine what when the left says all the right hates you, the right hates what you do, the right hates people who aren't exactly like them. How radical to have this in response in people's head, building cognitive dissonance.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've even asked like G-girls before, what would it be like if you could just, they come in frumpy in their, sweatshirts and whatever. A lot of them from jogging, whatever. I'll say, what would it be like if you could just deal in that all night and be valued just as much by the guys, just because of who you are, and you didn't have to perform. Yeah, I know you're proud of what you can show and all that, and you actually enjoy the fashion of it. I get that. I'm cool with that. I get it. I understand where you're at. But what if you didn't have to? And what if they thought just as much of you, and you didn't have to earn any of that? Would that be cool, or would that not be? And every one of them, that would be cool.
They would prefer to dress up and look pretty by choice rather than necessity.
Bingo. Because they do it by necessity, it gets them big tips. They make a lot. They do very well. And
yay capitalism.
Yeah, yay capitalism. Yeah, the capitalism, and it's another reason that we all know capitalism was created for men.
Yes, this is we are just perpetuating the patriarchy. That's what it is.
Exactly. Yes. Hooters. Yes, the Hooters mentality. But I don't think it's really not hard. It's not hard to talk morality with young people. It's hard to force morality on young people.
Except if you're the big government. Except if you're Michelle Obama. Except if you are the EPA and the FDA, which we will be talking about later with John Gabriel. How is that for a tease? In hour two. I want to get back to Leslie's notes that she copiously assembled and get to something that.
Yeah, well, it's a lot of copy and paste, but whatever. Thanks for the credit.
Hey, I mean, a lot of notes. I think that the ACE piece is really, I mean, that's pretty huge. The going through that whole
that we're choosing the anger. Yeah.
Yeah.
His
so
point.
Let's move from the scolding to the
to scold people for being scolds. Yes, and all these threads do actually kind of tie together, where we're trying to create more positive energy and not so much preaching but more teaching and being more positive types of people that they want to join and be like. And Ace wrote a really good article about the fact that we're choosing our own anger response. There's a great quote. There is what Obama does to us, which is make us angry by insulting us and calling us all sorts of horrible names. But then there is what we do to ourselves. These are frightening times, and our political leadership's reaction to this is to double down on failure and futility and fairways. I mean, he's talking about golf and stuff like that. I think people have to be very, very careful when they rationalize to themselves what they know in their hearts or souls to be bad behavior with easy, glib, self-flattering excuses like, well, I'm angry and justly angry, so every angry outburst is justified. It's not. And it's not just that it's unjustified, it's selling ourselves short as human beings. And we see a lot of this, particularly online, because online interactions are short and shallow and only, partial, because it's just reading and we're not getting all of the dimensions of conversations like you do with the nonverbal cues and all of that. But there is an awful lot of easy, glib, self-flattering excuses. And we have to, as people who are trying to change the conversation, we have to be prepared to get those kind of excuses thrown back at us when we maybe call somebody out on their anger and say, well, you don't, perhaps there was a different way to say it than to be judgmental about the actors who took off their clothes in pictures, because that's what I'm thinking of right now, because that's what you were talking earlier. That's just that's the only example I'm coming up with right now. When we counter somebody and say, actually, the problem isn't that they were getting naked in front of the camera. The problem is that their property was stolen, and this is more the issue that we really need to focus on. We're going to get pushback from people on our side justifying their own bad behavior. And I never know what the right response to that is. Do I counter their counter and try to convince them to be nice, or do I just be nice and walk away? You know, how far do I go in the whole Patrick Swayze Roadhouse clip of be nice? They call you a whatever, be nice. They yell at you, be nice, until it's time to not be nice. When do we not be nice? I don't know. I don't really know that. I end up just ignoring people and walking away from it. And
I know what you're talking about, and I feel you. It's tough. I get into these conversations a lot, and I'm sure we all do. I think that it is possible, if you are dealing with somebody who's rational and just has a different opinion than you, to just present your case, keep presenting your case, and then walk away. I mean, I think it's very, very possible, very doable, and depending upon your comfort level with the person, you can either escalate or de-escalate in your aggressiveness in the discussion. Like, I have friends that I don't really pull too many punches with. I feel free to be kind of a jerk with them about stuff, because I know that there's a pretty wide range there of what's acceptable. But if you're talking to somebody who you don't know in, say, the CU, in the group that we have here, or in a Facebook group or whatever, and you don't know who you're talking to, if they're being aggressive and they're being jerks and they're not not participating in the discussion, it's just like dealing with trolls of any kind. You don't engage them. You present your case. You don't argue at them. You present your case to the entirety of the people who are reading the thread, and then you go. You don't engage with what they're trying to dump on you.
But it makes me mad, and I get angry when people don't understand my message of being nice. I want to be mad at them for not being nice. Yes, I understand the
but
kind of backwardsness of it.
That is a kind excuse me, that is a very difficult problem in terms of how we attempt to practically change the conversation, and that is exactly what you're searching for here. How one corrects gently, with someone who's got all their ragey bits, all aflame and whatever. It's a hard balance to strike. Do you wait until someone's rage has subsided and then, deal with the issue then? Or do you highlight it as an example, separately, what not to do? Those are good questions.
And then that's calling them out and picking on them, and that's going to then make them be defensive and have to argue with you, when all I'm trying to do is teach and show and make everybody better.
Right.
And they're not getting my message, damn it.
But no, those are good things.
Right.
Go
Don't you
ahead.
think there are times to be more aggressive, though?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there absolutely are times to be more aggressive. If something is so if a case is being presented really, really poorly and adamantly, there are definitely times to make an example. But again, this is one of those situations where if you aren't really, really sure that you are going to be able to knock it out of the park, be careful, because you don't want to. There's a cost for being wrong. There's a cost for not being able to complete your decimation of the opposite side. There are definitely costs if you fail.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm talking more not the people we would train, but us. Everybody on this panel, let's face it, can everyone on this panel can dissect somebody quick and hard, and even taunt them and have fun with it, and twist them around your finger, and then force your entire finger and arm into boiling hot, scalding water. We do whatever we want rhetorically to people. We're very good at it here. We really.
I'm uncomfortable with all of this violent imagery.
No, it's great. I like to hurt people. I like to suck out their souls. Is really what I want to do.
I just want to go on record here as saying I don't know that man. I've never been in the same place with that man. There's no proof that I know this man.
Okay, I don't actually do all that, okay? But I do. But there are times when I'll pick on a troll and mock him or whatever.
Yeah.
It can be very fun, yes.
But wait, no, let's differentiate here what we're talking about. There are people who are acting trollishly and,
on our side and the other side. I mean, it's politically neutral.
And then there are people who are venting, some, as Ryan calls it in our internal chat, righteous indignation that they believe must be expressed and are not considering the ramifications of expressing it, nor the way in which they're expressing it, whether it's helpful or not. Those are the people I think that we are more inclined to encounter than someone that's an internet troll for fun and that's what they do. These are people we have to work with. These are people we do have to come together and be in some manner on the same team, whether it's this fall or 2016 or any other political election cycle you want to call it, or whatever movement that we've got going forward. These are people that we will need, and it is very difficult to walk that line or to say that someone is discardable, that we need to discard them because they are that toxic. We would like them to be less toxic, and so the question is how to get to the place where we could reach those people. And my question is, doing it outside of their rage event, would that be better and more helpful when they're less likely to be defensive? That is the way I handle it when I ever do have to handle it, but that's just because I don't have time to play with people on the internet one-on-one for hours over trying to make a point. I will do it if I have to. I have done it occasionally, but only very, very occasionally. My time is better spent, trying to reach a different set of goals, a different kind of argument.
Well, really quick here. I mean, Ryan's making a good point here, talking about, how they would trivialize what happened in Benghazi. When somebody does that, Felicia, what would be your strategy?
But again, those are people trolling what's going on. I'm not talking about those people.
No. I'm not talking about the hardliners. There are just I got to be honest, there are just everyday Democrats who really make light of Benghazi.
Well, of course, but again, I'm talking about people in our movement. The correctiveness doesn't necessarily go toward people on the left. I want the left, honestly, I want the left to show their asses.
Okay.
I do. Those guys, if they're going to get crazy and nuts and offensive, let them do it, because I'm going to come along behind and highlight that and show it off and make them look like the bad guys. What I want to do is try to mitigate the damage from our side of our guys being the bad guys.
So you mean
right? Like this weekend, there was a couple of gun control conversations where the anti-gunners were so full of rage, and they were expressing feelings and emotions and what right do you have and why do you need to. They were being the typical lefty controlling person, and to a man, everybody who was pro-gun was rational, reasonable, reasoned. We were just making our case, and it was making them angrier and angrier, like little Rumpelstiltskin. It was awesome. But that was, that was kind of an argument against the left on the weekend, so who really cares? It was fun, though.
Was there an audience? I mean, were you making them look bad and it was really helpful, or?
There were plenty of people in that conversation thread there for a while. Of course, it's still going on. It diverted as it was just an internet conversation. To me, it was more of a exercise in being calm and seeing how the other side is uncalm and continues to be uncalm and gets more and more irrational the more calm and rational the other side is. It was just kind of an exercise in seeing how that worked. It wasn't really worth anything.
Right, and if I had somebody that was purposefully trolling from the left, or even someone that kind of vaguely knew what they were doing in the middle, I call JD. He's my troll protection, so he deals with that. He has the patience.
Anytime, day or night, at NJJDB, just tweet me and I'll come and take care of the trolls.
Who are you gonna call?
Yes.
Troll busters.
Yes. But JD has the patience for that, and more importantly, the experience and the vast internet exposure to be able to recognize all the little troll tricks, the logical fallacies, the stupid rhetorical flourishes that they use. But the chief thing is that's for people that are not us. Not you, not our side.
Right.
What about the ones who are us? What do you use to more unite? Bring down the heat.
To bring down the heat. That's the difficult part, because I mean the goal here is to not. I mean, obviously you know this because this is basically what the party of choice is all about, is uniting the right and bringing people together. But when you have somebody who's being really distracting and disruptive and not helpful, and saying, like, for instance, racist things. I mean, to me, that's a good place to just utterly destroy them and get them out. Obviously, the first thing that you should do is, if you can remove that person from the conversation through whatever means you have, do that, because they are not. They're not helping us, and they're just destroying credibility for us, hand over fist. So that's the first thing. But the second thing is, if this is a person who is somewhat rational and is just like making really obnoxious comments, the only way to go about it is to go through and explain, hey, this is why that's not the right way to approach the situation. I'm not talking about racist comments. Racist comments, those are, you get rid of those 100% of the time. I'm talking about...
Well, the example of the Eric Erickson quote, that's a good one, I think. A good recent example. Where Ace says we cause our own problem. We let Obama turn us into jerks, and Eric Erickson fell prey to that because Obama and the left ramp up the whole minimum wage $15 thing, and that's absolutely them trolling us. They and the unions are pushing these minimum wage demonstrations to get us to react badly, and so then Eric Erickson, always willing to help, as he was guest hosting on Rush Limbaugh's show, so he said this in front of millions of people, and he said that if you're still making minimum wage at the age of 30, or whatever his phrase was, you failed at life. And that, of course, immediately got quoted and reported on by the left media, talking about, see how conservatives hate poor people and how judgmental they are. And that you just kind of know that's going to happen. But what broke my heart is how many of our people took Limbaugh's quote and shared it with, "Attaboy, yeah, amen, that's right," and it just ripped me up.
That's something I want to talk about here, and something that Andy can back me up on. Andy, what do you see when we have conservative reporters going to liberal protests, and you try and do a man-on-the-street interview? What happens when a conservative reporter, when they know that there's a conservative reporter in the group, and they're sent out, to interview people, man on the street style. What happens?
The liberals immediately shut it down.
The organizers.
Right.
They come in, they say, no, you're not talking with him because he's a conservative and he's going to twist your words. That is what we need, except we need that for Rush Limbaugh.
Yeah.
We need that for, I mean, because that's what happens. That is exactly what happens every single time. Is that we don't have those watchful eyes saying, "Hey, watch out! You're going to get misquoted, and it's going to be a big deal, and it's going to explode."
But see, here's the thing. What Erickson claims that he said is, if you're working your tail off, doing the best you can, all this other stuff, that's not failing. That's work, and work is rewarding. But if you're in your 30s making minimum wage in a career and standing on the street demonstrating and demanding that the government do something about it, yes, you have failed at life. That's a distinction that the left was able to drive a complete semi through, because all they took from it is you're failing at life if you're protesting minimum wage.
Okay,
And guys on our side were eager to agree with what the left thought Erickson said.
Yes.
That's what I had a problem with.
And let's be clear. This is part of what leftists do. They absolutely twist our words. We know it's going to happen.
Sure.
But we always want our guys to be thinking about that before they open their mouths. And Erickson is one of the worst, which is ironic because, as you point out in some of the show prep that you did, he just wrote an article. Wrote an article about how his faith and his conservative populism were struggling because people are being mean.
Yeah, they get it from you, man. I was so reminded of that commercial where the parent asks his kid, why are you smoking dope? And he said, I learned it from you, Dad. I learned it from you. Well, Eric Erickson, if you have a problem with the commenters on your blog, they learned it from you.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, 1 second here, guys, because
Sorry to slam Eric, but...
No, I want to get back more to what Fishy was talking about earlier, and let me give you a very incredibly common scenario. Because right now we're talking about inflammatory speech on the right, which gets us in hot water and makes things on the left.
Yeah.
What about, getting back to what Fishy was talking about, trying to unite the right, get people to work together when they are trying to be divisive? I'm going to throw one at you guys. You tell me what to do. You're dealing with the Tea Partier. The person says, out of principle, I would rather lose this election than vote for the, you know where I'm going, than vote for the lesser of two evils.
Because they're all voting for evil, and evil is bad. Yeah.
Okay. What are you going to say to where they don't shut you down, blow up, call you a rhino? You know, what's your strategy?
Is that before or after I raid the liquor cabinet?
Well, you're going to need the liquor. You're going to need the liquor. So after.
Okay. Seriously, this is a real situation and something that we come up against far too often. That one, that P word gets us in a lot of trouble. Principle, because it's assumed that if you vote for Mitch McConnell, then that means that you're not principled or whatever, because he agrees with you on 80% of the stuff, but he's clearly going to be against your principles if you vote for him. He's the cockfighting guy. It's infuriating, but to me the thing that you have to recognize is whether or not they are convertible on the subject, and if they aren't, then to me, I think the number one thing that you can do is point them towards an election where they can help, because they clearly are passionate about their principles. So point them at a principled candidate that they can help, and say, hey, you know what, if you're going to stay home for this election, that's fine, whatever, or I would prefer that you didn't, but go and support this guy in wherever and make sure that he gets elected because he is a principled conservative, according to your principles, and he is somebody that you can support. So if you
I
aren't
love that.
if you aren't going to support the guy in your race, if you aren't going to support that guy, then make sure that you're making phone calls for the guys you do support. That, to me, is the best way to handle that situation.
I like that because most of the time I just walk away from the
Yeah.
conversation, but giving them an alternative, that's really good.
Can I add something to it?
Please.
I would say all that, but I would also add one last thing. I'd say, look, one last plea. Understand, let's say you're a Santorumite and I'm a Romneyite or whatever. Okay, not you, JD. Okay, but I would add one last thing. I'd say, yes, work on that, with those candidates you really believe in your area. But let me tell you something. If you really want, don't just think about that candidate you don't like, Mitch McConnell. Think about all his followers. If you really want his followers to support your candidate, they're going to want to see unity, that you're willing to support theirs, even when theirs says a couple things that offend you, because you grasp the bigger picture. If you're going to look at Mitch McConnell's followers and say, can't you guys grasp the bigger picture? You can't just ignore us because we're Tea Partiers and not send in checks and vote for our candidate. You're killing us. If that's how you feel, why don't you show that to them?
I keep coming back to the idea that there's a 100-year plan that's been launched against us, and we are not going to achieve perfect principled leadership overnight. The people in the Tea Party have very little experience politically compared to your establishment candidates, and it's going to take time to accumulate enough experience and ability to beat them every time. We talked about this when we talked about the whole race in not just with Eric Cantor losing, but with, what's his name in Mississippi?
Thad Cochran?
Thad Cochran, thank you. We talked about these variables. People were elated that Cantor got thrown out. People were despondent that Thad Cochran won his primary. And there were a lot of factors that led to that. But we did come to the conclusion that this was really the death knell of the establishment because of how they behaved. Now, that doesn't mean that we let these guys slide, but as Kurt Schlichter says, and he said this in numerous pieces, we got to take care of the immediate problems now, and that is stopping the left from rolling over us. And that's priority one. And we'll deal with the dudes on our team that misbehave later. We'll have the court martials after the event, but we need all the forces on the ground now to do the things that we need to do. Now, I don't know if that's a resonant message with everyone, but I'm sure people who are dithering about it, that might help them to think through the issues that way, that we will indeed have a disciplinary hearing about the guys on our side who are so heinous.
I think it's a great message, Felicia, and the reason is this. The big reason they don't want to compromise and work with you is because you don't talk about holding people to account after the election. Not you, but I mean, we don't talk about that. We basically say we're going to fight it out amongst ourselves, see who gets the candidate in. That's the ones on top for now, and then we'll go right back to fighting amongst ourselves after the election. No one in Mississippi will be held to account. If we say, no, they'll be held to account, I guarantee you the guy in Mississippi, this is his last run. He's done. And not only that, but he just signed the Republican Party of Mississippi over to the Tea Party for decades. Okay? Don't worry about it.
And you, Mr. Fox, on both of their houses, you can help us by reminding us on November 5th that we need to go after the Republicans in Mississippi to clean up their house. So I will assign you the task of following up, doing cleanup after election. You can spearhead that one and agree with me as I'm doing everything up until November 4th.
And there's nothing wrong with doing a two-step maneuver. Because it's smart. It's tactics. And just because you use tactics that may not be your optimal your optimal solution, there's still tactics to get where you want to go. There's a strategy involved there. And the strategy is, I'm going to give you a little leeway on your leash, but as soon as you're across the finish line, I'm choking you back. And we're going to have a little talk. And I think that if you are in the room, if you are working these campaigns or you are working with these campaigns, you have a better opportunity to get in the door to those guys after the election and make your case and do the scolding, or you're in a better position, better connected with other people who feel the way you do to start the effort right then to replace that guy.
Right. And that was a good point about tactics, strategies, and goals, and I think of it as a pyramid. The tactics are on the bottom of the pyramid, and as long as they are compliant with your strategy and your goals, any tactic works, and it doesn't have to be just the one that you choose. And we just got a new guest in here, and this would be John Gabriel. Welcome.
Hello, how you doing?
Hi. Good to see you here.
This is awesome. This is X-John from Ricochet and Twitter. If you aren't following him, I mean, that you're like one of the two people that aren't in the conservative movement. John, I just want to introduce you to everybody. I'm NJJDB, JD. We've got Fishy, Felicia Cravens from Free Radical Network. We've got Andy and Corey from the Party of Choice. Leslie from the Conservative Union, and Ryan also from the Conservative Union. We're a group of 3 conservative organizations that we're trying to focus on messaging and get the movement going in a better direction as far as outreach and as far as making sure that we don't look like morons to the rest of the world without being rhinos or any of that stuff. So we're really glad to have you on.
Oh, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
And Ryan isn't actually a homeless child sitting on the steps, and I'm actually not a cartoon detective. We are human beings, but I don't have a good internet connection, so the video stays off.
Right.
And I understand that Corey and Andy are actually live human beings as well, although they have a photograph.
Yes, there's speculation there. The reason why we have you on, or the reason why you were connected with the Refinery in any way, shape, or form is because you wrote an excellent piece about the contrast between the Defending the Dream Summit and Netroots, and we had a really good conversation talking about that, and that is a big, a great discussion to have, because it shows that conservatives are not the uniform, everybody's wearing a sweater vest version that thing that the left tries to sell everybody, versus the left that tries to put everybody in their boxes and just be that amorphous blob of the left.
Yeah, it was kind of good to see just the diversity on display, and kind of the big thing that I got from it was about a month ago I snuck into the Netroots Nation event in Detroit, the leading progressive shindig, I don't know what they call it, conference, and the main difference between it, I was going to write a piece about the different speeches at Defending the Dream and things like that, but what really stood out to me was just the attitude of the crowd, how when you were at Netroots, everybody was in their own little balkanized group. You had the feminist in this group, you had the African-American feminists over on the other side of the room, you had the domestic workers who want to unionize in a different part of the room, you have the LGBT activists, they were on one side of the room. Everybody was like segmented into these tiny little groups, and no one would interact with each other. When a session would break up, everybody would stay in their little hive, and there would be a lunch break, and they would all be having lunch together in their own little groups. And since I didn't come with a group, it's just most people just kind of kept their head down, looking down on the floor, or just talking amongst themselves only. And the only people that I noticed that would even talk to me really was, and I couldn't help but call them the pajama boys. They were just kind of the urban hipsters. They were extremely deferential to everybody. Whenever they would sit down at a lunch table, they would apologize to everybody at the table for intruding, and they were the only ones who would talk to me, but their main concern was basically identifying where I fit. Okay, well, who are you here with? Not with anyone. I just came on my own. Oh, well, you should go at least to your state caucus and get organized with them, because everybody is put into little boxes. Everybody had a box. Everybody had a label, and you weren't. I wasn't. Hey, I'm John, and I represent my own ideas and beliefs of an individual. It was, okay, you are a little cog in some greater group. Are you with the unions? Are you gay? Are you? Well, obviously, I was a white male, which kind of makes me suspect anyway. But what is your deal? Are you a teacher? What group do you fit in? And when they couldn't identify a group I fit in, all they could say is, oh, because I mentioned I was from Arizona. Oh, you're from Arizona? Find the Arizona caucus, and they will put you in a little subgroup. It was like the Borg. To the contrary, when you go to conservative events, and Defending a Dream was a good example of it, everybody's just chatting. Everybody's hanging out. Everybody's really nice to each other. I'd sit next, on one side of me would be a young girl who was, I don't know, early on in college, and on the other side would be an old dude next to me, and we'd all just be chatting with each other. And we were interested in each other, and, oh, where are you from? What you doing? Where do you work? Some people had just joined the movement. Other people were skeptical of the movement. Some were libertarian. Some were conservative. Some were more social con. Some were more fiscal con. And it was just, everybody was just hanging out and having a good time. I'd get on a shuttle bus. Everybody on the bus would be chatting. You would have wealthy people, not wealthy people like me, and just this big mix of people would just get together, and wherever you were, they would just hang out and chat, and it was great. I was exhausted on the flight home, and I had my normal thing where, oh crap, who's going to sit next to me, and I hope they don't talk to me. And this lady sits down next to me. She's probably, I don't know, late 50s, early 60s, something like that. And then I noticed that she has Defending the Dream pass peeking out of her bag. And so I said, oh yeah, I was just there. And we ended up having a great conversation for about an hour, which I never talk to people on the plane because I'm kind of antisocial at times. But once again, it's everybody I met. It was just great conversation, and it was just the attitude was so different. And the left, too, is so negative. And everything is, I'm a victim. Oh, yeah, well, I'm a bigger victim. Oh, well, you shut up because you're white and I'm black. Oh, yeah, well, I'm gay and female, and that trumps your blackness. And it was just this if I can use the term pissing match between everybody, is who is the greater victim, because the only way you can win an argument in progressive world is to prove that you're the biggest loser. Yeah. I'm more impressed than you are. I'm way more impressed than you can even imagine. You don't know how bad I suck.
Yeah, you can ask Felicia. We've been trying to set up Oppression, the board game, for a while now, where you win the game when you collect the least amount of privilege of
yeah.
But that's very interesting that the left was checking your papers, so to say.
Who do you belong to?
I like that phrasing. We have to use that. That's good.
The other thing is you weren't accosted and asked if you were a rhino. That nobody did that to you at Defending the Dream?
No, not at all. And that's the thing. I could, you can just kind of tell, people supported different candidates. It was a lot more groupthink at the lefty events. And I think part of it, too, when I wrote the piece over at Ricochet, some of the members were saying, well, that's kind of self-selected because AFP is naturally a little more fiscally minded. That is true. However, it accepts people from all across the board. And, you had people who, were like, say, their Catholicism on their sleeve, and they were totally accepted. It wasn't like, ooh, what are you doing here? You're not one of us. And I've been to so many different conferences with such a diverse crowd on the conservative side, whether it be something in my state or city or something national. And it's just this hodgepodge of people. And for all the talk about, Republicans are in a civil war and Republicans are in disarray, for the most part, it's like, yeah, we have different things about us, and that's kind of why we're conservative, because we're unique and we recognize everybody else is unique. And I recognize that, hey, they're really into this one thing, I'm into this other thing. That's cool that we can both be different. Whereas on the left, it was just get in line, fit in your box, and stay there. Where is your caucus meetings? Because they had all these different caucus meetings. But they did also have the gender-neutral bathroom. They did not have that at Defending the Dream. That was Advantage Netroots, because I did use it, but I thought it'd be a little more exciting, and it was boring.
Well, because I think guys
gender-neutral
want
bathrooms.
gender-neutral bathrooms because that's like getting into the wonder of a woman's bathroom, because guys know that the girls' bathrooms are nicer than theirs.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if I had to sit down, though. That's the one thing I was. I was gender neutral.
So literally toilet humor. This is awesome.
This is amazing.
I got a question about that, though. When you talk about the difference between Netroots and Defending the Dream, and I wish I had been able to go to Netroots. That would have been a fun experience to visit. But do you think that this is part of the kind of dynamic the left has been pushing so long, to be all about mobilizing all the time, organizing every moment, that there always has to be a destination and a purpose toward, advancing progressivism in the most organized, quote unquote, community organized way possible? Is that sort of the factor that makes those conferences like that, do you think?
I think so. Yeah, they don't want to be herding cats. I can only imagine. I've never been to it, but I'd love to go to just a purely libertarian convention. There's one, and I cannot recall the name. It's in Vegas every year. Is it Freedom Fest? Is that the name of it? Really popular. It's there every year, and I would just love to compare the two, because
I think they call it Burning Man.
Yeah.
Or no, that's the Libertine Convention. Sorry.
I will say, Defending the Weed. I will say that there's a big difference between Freedom Fest and the Libertarian Party Convention.
Oh, yeah.
Because the Libertarian Party Convention is a good place to get killed by somebody, because they have 17 different candidates running for president, and they all hate each other, and they've all been running the same campaign for the past 40 years.
We're going to have knife fights over Rothbard, and yeah.
Yeah.
How exciting.
Exactly. Before we get to Bob Costas, which is just a really.
Hold on, JD. Can I ask a quick question?
Yes, absolutely. Go ahead, Ryan.
So, John, do you think we can learn from their organization? Like Fishy said, they're really organized and they're good at getting things done, focusing on the goals, whether it's a short-term or long-term goal. And you went to the conservative conference, it was pretty laid back, everyone could talk and go wherever they wanted. Could we learn something from having a little more structure, a little better organization, clearly enumerated goals and things like that?
The one thing that I like is Netroots had a cool app that you could load on your iPhone or Droid, and you could check off, and there was a social component too, so you could check off, here's the track I'm in, here are the classes I attended, you could track people you met, things like that. I thought that was kind of cool, just from a geeky perspective, and it seemed like a lot of people weren't using it. I was trying to use it, and my iPhone's kind of old. I need to get the new one, or a watch. But so mine was kind of slow and clunky. It could have used some work, but I thought that was kind of handy and kind of cool, because then you can keep in touch with the people you meet. The thing that's insidious about it, though, is when you first sign in, I left it on my phone for about a week, and they were constantly buzzing me with updates. We need you to contact your congressperson and yell at him about this issue, because basically it was like if you give $5 to the Republican National Committee, and then they will follow you to the gates of hell, as Biden would say, demanding you give more money. It's like once they have your name, you are screwed, and that's kind of what it's like with this. They use it to organize people. A lot of it is, if you attempted to organize Republicans this way, they would take out their guns, and I mean that literally. They're like, get out of my life. I don't want to be organized. And so part of it is it's a very different perspective. It's their inherent. A good example, something I should probably write on this, because it's been bugging me lately. When I've gone to different cities, there's always like either a light rail or a campaign to build the light rail. And if you look at it, even transportation must be collective. You don't want everybody riding in their own car or, God forbid, a motorcycle.
And the progressive technology of last century. I mean, they're so modern.
Yes, yeah.
Railroads,
exactly.
woohoo!
I want you to go to a central hub and go with your little collective from point A to point B, because it's organized. And government workers can organize you and tell you where to go and control where you go, and then modify your behavior. If they think not enough people are working in this sector, maybe they'll increase the amount of traffic to that sector and avoid the downtown because it's getting overcrowded. But it's just this mentality where if you mention mass transit to a liberal, they look at it as a moral good. Oh, no, that's great. We need that. We need it. And you ask why, and they're like, because we need it. There's kind of not a lot of thought, but I think it's just their perspective is organized people are better than non-organized people. So I think the movements are really different. The only thing I would take from them is the app, which is, kind of small ball, but I think I'd kind of like it. And also it's kind of a nice youth focus. But in general, the mood of it was just real downcast and hangdog. It was, and I think part of it was because they got their miracle dream worker in office and everything's fallen to pieces, to put it politely. But they know it doesn't work. It's obvious it doesn't work. And also, too, I tended to go to a lot of school choice related seminars, and they were just so defeated looking and they were really upset at inner city families who choose charter schools, which I thought was very interesting.
You're saying school choice, but not pro-school choice,
No, anti-school choice. Yeah,
well,
everything was how school choice is the devil, and all their arguments went from school choice is evil. We're tired of these politicians like Rahm Emanuel and others screwing us over by forcing school choice into our communities. And then they would finish the paragraph with, and that's why we need to give more money to government. No. I'm like, and they were complaining about Arnie Duncan.
2 plus 2 equals Apple.
Yeah, and they were complaining about Rahm Emanuel and Arnie Duncan like they were Satan and Satan Jr. And then they would demand that we raise taxes and give them more money. And I was just like, but everything was just so emotion driven. It was just this rage that they had. It's just ill-defined. They didn't know what to do with it, but they were angry. There was one person who went into school choice and how school choice leads to underfunded district, which leads to underpaid teachers, and it goes from here to here to here, and finally she blamed school choice. She blamed on fracking. And I was just like, I was trying to draw a flow chart. She was blaming casinos, and then the last thing that school choice leads to is fracking, and I'm like, wow, that's awesome.
That is absolutely insane.
And I recorded it, and I kept going back through the recording, saying, okay, how did she? I couldn't figure it out, but
can I map this out?
And people were clapping. People were like, yeah. You tell them.
One second here. You have this. You have a recording of this?
Yeah. I recorded. Is it not
on the internet? Is it on the internet yet?
I don't know if I put that one on the internet. I know there was one about, let's see. There was one about think tanks, conservative think tanks, but they were extremely clever because Democrats are the creative class, and they call them stink tanks. Isn't that a good one?
Oh my gosh, that's brilliant.
That's a zinger.
Brilliant.
And they never used the word think tank throughout the entire seminar. It was like stink, and they'd give you a little look. They're stink tanks, a little Maddow sneer. And they thought that was
so this was nut roots for 12-year-olds? Is that what it was?
Yeah, pretty much. It was a weird gig, man.
These are the people that are beating us.
I know.
Yeah. How do we stop that?
The whole time I was thinking, I can't believe we're losing to these idiots.
Before I have an aneurysm, I just want to say, I want to point out one thing, was that CPAC has had an app for the past 2 years.
Oh, okay.
Neither of those apps told me anything at all, wanted to have anything to do with me after CPAC was over, and let's throw it over to Corey and Andy because they have a question.
All right.
Well, first of all, we're really hurt by this whole thing because I'm a casino manager and Corey works in oil and gas with fracking.
Oh, you are the
cause of all the world's ills. I never thought we were doing it.
You probably like school choice too.
Yeah.
Evil Satan.
I know. No kidding.
She believes in fracking underneath casinos, and it's.
Actually, I'm all for drilling in playgrounds and fracking under schools too.
Yes, and we're evil.
And gambling if a certain well will produce.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
Drilling is
using child labor, of course, to dig the wells.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yes.
Well, we have to sacrifice the children to the well if it doesn't, it's something to throw in there. Yeah. We're evil. We're conservatives. We hurt people. Okay. Anyway, John, let's see. I was raised in leftist. I was raised in leftist academia, so I come from the evil horde. And I can tell you really quick here, organizing the left, we always knew it was really easy because even though they were separated into all those well-defined groups, because they believe in identifying as groups, not individuals, we knew they'd all work together at the end toward one common goal, and that was controlling other Americans. That was their goal, and they would all come together to work toward that. On the right, we seem to have two problems. I want to ask, the first one you kind of touched on, we're individuals, so you're herding cats. We all have our own thing. But the second thing is this. What do you do about this? The right has sectioned off into so many, you got this Tea Party group, that Liberty group, this Patriot group, this Republican group, this Libertarian group, and they've all got leaders who have become very successful financially and with popularity because they're running their group and they get their spot on Hannity and their spot on this and that. And because of that, they don't want to work together as one team because it diminishes them. I mean, I seem to see that a lot. Do you see it? And if you do, what would we do?
Yeah, I have definitely seen that. My background, I'm kind of recent to politics or policy or whatever you want to call it. My background is all private sector until probably 4 years ago. I was always in marketing. I worked for Cold Stone Creamery and Honeywell and a few other companies. And then they needed a director of marketing at an Arizona-based think tank called the Goldwater Institute. So I worked there for 2 years, and about 2 years ago, I went freelance. So I'm kind of new to it. I'm not, my background isn't working with all these nonprofits, but now that I've seen them for the past 4 or 5 years, there's definitely a lot of drawbacks on them. There are many good organizations, and there's many that are doing very good work. In general, I really prefer the state-based ones. Part of the reason for that is selfish. I'm a federalist. I kind of am getting tired of hearing about everything going on in D.C. I think a lot of the real progress has been going on in the states, and it's not to denigrate all the great people working nationally. That's kind of personally one of my issues, is I love kind of empowering the state-based groups. I'm not sure how to get the various groups to work together. I know that a lot of them fall to the whole cult of personality thing we mock on the left all the time, where you have a very strong leader, and that leader, the group's fortunes rise and fall with that leader. And I just think that's kind of silly. Even someone as venerated as like Ronald Reagan, he was imperfect. He did some things that were terrible. He did some things that were awesome. And it's just, I don't get this kind of cult of personality worship, whether it's on the left or the right. You also have people, media people like Hannity or talk radio hosts or things like that, that again, some people get so slavishly obedient to those personalities, they lose sight of the big picture. And I'm not sure how you get them to work together other than just kind of supporting the people that you think are doing good work and ignoring the people who aren't. Because also, too, some groups do awesome work for a few years and then they just kind of fade away or they get distracted by other issues. So I don't know. I don't know the best way to organize, but I sure wish that they would work together. I know the state-based groups do a lot of work together, but in part it's because they're not fundraising competition, let's say. A group in Arizona and a group in Texas might have a couple of the same donors, but for the most part they're getting funded by people in their state, so it's not a big deal for Goldwater Institute to work with Texas Public Policy Foundation.
Well, really quick here, just with that, and I want you to keep running on it, that's another big problem. These groups are all fighting over funding. Yeah. Every conservative has 8 of these groups coming to them for funding. The Democratic Party, man, they work as one. That money goes right toward winning for the group. What do we do?
Man, that is a great question.
Well, John, you're a marketing guy.
I need to think about more. Yeah, I need to think about that more, because I definitely wish they would push in the same direction. I think it's getting so atomized now. Nobody trusts the Republican National Committee. Nobody wants to give to them anymore because it is such a big tent, and it's almost turning now into these micro-targeting things. Like, my issues are federalism and school choice and whatever else, and so I'm just going to give to these little micro groups, and then they can funnel the money up to the best candidates and things like that. It is really tough to see them fight each other, and then you have distorting characteristics of people like Adelson in Vegas, who every presidential candidate or anybody who's even considered it goes to Vegas to kiss his ring and suck up to him and hope that person funds them. But I kind of don't want a presidential candidate, and I probably agree with Adelson on 90% of the issues, but I don't want one person owning a candidate. I'd like a lot of smaller donors too. Yeah, that's something I want to think about more, just how people are fighting over the same donors and how we can figure out a way to work together.
Well, I think the left rallies around the cult candidate, and then they rally around the common cause of victory at all costs. They don't even care what they're winning. As long as they're winning, it's good. Maybe our answer on the right is that we rally around the common message. And you, marketing guy, you know the power of messages. And maybe the diverse groups, if we can come up with, on the conservative side, a powerful unifying message that then Goldwater Institute's activities function as part of or serving that message, and then Texas does the same thing, and our presidential candidates, and we can all be rallied around the achievement of the goals presented in that marketing message, and maybe that's what our side rallies around, because we don't want to be cult of personality people, and we don't want to be victory at any cost people, but we do need to find a way to herd the cats and all get us headed in the same direction. And I think a message is the only thing that we're going to rally around.
You might be onto something there, because I'm thinking through the conferences I attended this year: CPAC, the Texas State Convention, that one.
Freedom Works.
Yeah, no, this was the one we attended together.
Whatever that was.
It was the AFP TX.
Yes.
TX Online. And this Defending the Dream one. There's been so many things that have been different about each one of them, but one thing that almost has been consistent throughout is that we didn't really see a lot of that sniping, the refusal to work with anybody. The people were typically that attended these things were sort of the people willing to work together. If there were booths, they were pushing their particular solution or their particular strategy or whatever, but there was nothing saying, I don't know, Nerf gun wars breaking out between booths or anything like that. There was no sniping going on. I didn't hear a lot of that. Maybe just togetherness is... Together
we all win, because, we do. We know that. We recognize that. Your victory is my victory.
What is that? The fight shirt? The quarreling shirt that they put siblings in together? I mean, maybe that's something we need to do. You are going to sit here and you are going to work together until you like each other, damn it. I don't know.
Yeah, I do have a solution now that I've thought about it. If everybody listening sends me $99, I will send that money to a plan to get this solved and make sure we never lose an election again. So, and a monthly payment of $99 would be great.
You promised to form a committee.
Yes.
To evaluate the possibility of creating a solution, yes.
Yes. John, there's no H in John, Jon, Gabriel. Just make it out to that. And it's a blue ribbon panel, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to leverage the existing synergies and gather all the stakeholders to make sure...
You've got the language.
I'm a marketing guy.
You totally are.
Okay.
But I'm going to. What we need to do basically is reset the paradigm, and I'm the man to do it.
Okay, I'm searching for the Hangout sound effects to give you the trombone thing or whatever.
You got to see first with the end in mind, and you've got it. Yeah. Yeah.
This is amazing. This is amazing podcasting right here. Um, since we are probably not going to solve 100% of the movement's problems regarding funding in the next half hour, um, before we get into the articles, I do want to go real quick, John, and ask you, what do you think? Just a quick bunch of questions. Who do you think currently the best voice for conservatism right now, messaging out there, getting our message across to the general public? Who do you think is the best at getting our message out? Who do you think needs some work, we'll say? And what do you think is our best issue going forward to push?
Well, obviously, the best voice in the movement, hands down, would be me. I think that's obvious.
A plus on the self-esteem there, dude. A
Yeah,
plus.
yeah. Well, we're all thinking it. Come on. I hate
Yeah.
false humility. I'm very proud of my humility. It's one of my many great characteristics is my humility.
I was just thinking, my gosh, he sees right through me. It's right into my soul. And I don't want to say your name because it's like, oh my gosh, at that point I'm kissing up. But
Yeah. That's why I said it. It was so awkward for everybody, so you don't want to look like the suck up. So it's just like, okay, I'll just blurt it out. We're all thinking it. Come on.
And then and then it took all the pressure off, and I was relieved. I feel better as a person, John.
Okay, well, that's what I'm here for. It's one of the reasons for my fabulous success. I think different people appeal to different personalities. Someone who I think is consistently awesome is Jonah Goldberg. He's someone who can translate difficult concepts into terminology that people get instinctively. He's not threatening or off-putting or haughty or personalize his attacks. I think he's really good at it. Looking at politicians, I've always been a fanboy of his, so that might be my bias creeping in. Someone who could use work, who has such an awesome message, but the way he communicates it doesn't work for a lot of people, is Bobby Jindal. I think the content of what he says is great. It's kind of difficult for me because my model president would be someone like Coolidge. I want a president who I don't see on TV, who I don't hear about. Maybe once a month he'll say, oh, by the way, we just blew up that country, or I'm reducing the taxes again for the 10th month in a row. But I don't want to hear about a president all the time, and that puts me on the outs. I would love to get a president like that who's media savvy by not being on the media every other day, because a politician shouldn't have that much purchase over life. I'm tired of turning to Food Network and seeing Michelle Obama, and then my kids flip to Disney and seeing Michelle Obama, and then it's like every channel has to be this political message. It's just enough. I'm so sick of hearing them. So I look at someone like Jindal and said, oh, his content is great, so he'd be a great president. But it doesn't work for a lot of people. He's off-putting for some reason to people, so I would love to see him broaden his appeal. Another guy who I think he's a part of messaging, and why I think Obama from the start was a horrible communicator, and it drove me nuts when everybody would say, oh, he's so great, he's such a great speaker, he's such a great communicator. Communication doesn't work if there's no conviction or action behind it. That's why when Ronald Reagan said, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down that wall, Gorbachev went, holy crap, what's he going to do? Because he had a track record. He didn't just throw out idle words, do the just words thing. He didn't do that. Everything he said had great weight behind it, and Gorbachev knew it. And when he said that word, everybody in East Germany and Moscow said, oh, crap, we're screwed.
Well, and it was
seriously.
And it was active rather than passive. Most of what Obama says is very passive voice.
Yeah, they are on the wrong side of the moral arc of history.
And it's just going to happen, that a miracle's going to happen and you'll be gone. It's like
exactly. And also, too, even if he says explicitly, Syria, this is a red line, if you cross it, you are dead to me, then it comes and goes, and he goes, I didn't mean that. So that's why he's a terrible communicator. And again, people just... because he's slick with words, I'm slick with words. I'm a marketing guy. I wouldn't be a good president. I've been in meetings with creatives doing sales pitches to design a new website for me. They're all awesome with words, and then you hire them and they can't build a website. That kind of reminds me of someone I know. But that's the thing. Communication is you have to put stuff behind it. So I think someone who's very low key and who might not be terribly dynamic, but he is a great communicator because he says what he means and he follows through, is Scott Walker. I thought he was not going to be a good speaker until I saw him give a speech out here in Phoenix once, and he was fantastic. A lot of personal anecdotes, a lot of great stories, and a lot of great content that he had. Once again, he didn't look like this, and I think Mitt Romney is a very fine person, and he's a better person than probably anybody I know, just a decent man. But he did have this, rich guy, out of touch, kind of has this 1950s feel to him, Ned Flanders kind of a mentality behind him. Scott Walker is very every guy. If you bumped into him in a bar, if you bumped into him at church, if you bumped into him at a high pressure office, he would fit in any of those environments. He seems very genuine, he's very straightforward, he's very well spoken, but not flashy at all. And I'm hoping the lack of flash is actually an asset, since at that time we will have had 8 years of nothing but flash and nothing behind it.
Hey, John, real quick, what do you think about Mike Lee? Have you followed him at all? I know he's not running, but he seems to have a lot of those qualities to me.
Yep. Mike Lee is fantastic. And again, he is someone who communicates not by talking his head off and sending out press releases 3 a day, but by doing. He is there doing things, and when he says things, they carry great weight because he isn't talking all the time. That's another mistake I think Obama has made is, in a way, it has served him to be so ubiquitous across media, but now when he has a serious situation like ISIS or immigration, whatever he's doing with that, everybody tunes him out because they know they're going to flip the channel in 5 minutes and he's going to be on ESPN. It doesn't matter. And being an older dude, I still remember I was in the Navy when Reagan, at the end of his term in office, when he would speak, the country would shut down. It's like, what's going on? Something serious is happening. What's happening? The president is taking time out to talk to us. Now it's like 4 times a week. It's and he's making some declaration on things, and he makes these confusing points, and he makes a gaffe or two, and he goes off prompter, and then in 2 days he's going to be speaking again about something. It's just it doesn't matter. It's cheap. Diamonds are valuable because they're rare, and when you talk all the time, your words are cheap. It doesn't matter anymore because they know you'll be blowing through a bunch of other BS in a couple days.
What if Obama were to do brackets on who's going to rise to power in the Middle East? Now, ISIS is really doing well, and there's several groups that I think he could have. I'm just saying this could work, guys.
He could do a basketball brackets with the Hamas, Hezbollah.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
This could sell. This could sell.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Even I don't understand him.
I'm seeing something on the Funny or Die thing, too. He could do a real wacky skit with, I don't know, maybe one of the lesser actors from Anchorman. That would really hook in the
Is there a Moorer actor from Anchorman? Aren't they all lesser actors? Sorry.
Yeah, that's true.
David
Ketchner. He'd be a good fit for it.
I gotta ask real quick.
You don't want a big star. You don't need Farrell for that project because that's kind of overselling it.
This is driving me crazy for the past week. Okay, does anyone else, and I'm specifically asking you, John, but everybody, does anyone else think this new spokes chick for the White House just reads like an SNL skit?
I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, she is. I did a Photoshop a while back of her at a food court wearing a hot dog on a stick outfit because every time I see her talk, I just think of mall. I just think a girl at the mall. I grew up next to Paradise Valley Mall in northern Phoenix. And actually that mall, Paradise Valley Mall, if you remember, there was the old David Spade, Chris Farley skit about girls working at the Gap. David Spade grew up about a mile or two away from me, and we're about the same age, I think, probably. Hopefully he's older, so I feel better. But he actually got the idea hanging out at that mall. So I saw like the same girls that he saw, and he based it on, and that's exactly what you reminds me of.
This is it. The war on women has just been reignited. We are going to lose the 2014 election by a landslide because of this.
There's just too many broads. They got to keep these broads out of the way, man.
But really, and isn't her name Harf, or is she the Pisaki person? Whichever one.
No. Yeah, Harf and Saki, that is a law firm you're never going to hire right there.
No, not at all. I think Harf is what happens to you after a really long night of drinking.
After you've been in the sorority with her too long, you end up harfing. You're harfing into the Saki.
Oh, wow.
Well, the thing is, both of their backgrounds, Harf and Saki, are being political handlers, being communication reps for the Obama campaign, and before that, the Kerry campaign and stuff like that. So they are nothing but political hacks, and that's why when Harf is on Twitter, the only enemy in her mind is Fox News, because everything's a political battle. It's like you are dealing with people who are beheading men and crucifying children, and you're worried about what flippin' Bill O'Reilly said. Who cares? I'm a conservative. I barely ever watch Fox News, and she's obsessed with it.
Yeah, and grow up and run the country, okay? Grow up and represent everyone in the country, not just your political people.
Yeah,
this administration is
about winning the hashtag war of the day.
Doesn't that kind of come back, though, to the fact that the Obama administration and before that the Obama campaign has spent so much time demonizing Republicans, demonizing conservatives? We have been the ultimate evil in the world, and now there's no rhetorical place for them to go.
Yeah, and he is... It's the first president I've ever seen who thinks he's the president of the people who voted for him, and nobody else. It's totally us versus them, and that's the thing. Had disagreements with Clinton, obviously. Had disagreements with both Bushes. You know, any president I've seen, I've had disagreements with him. Carter was always called the worst prior to Obama, but he viewed himself as the president of America, not the president of a certain wing of the Democratic Party. Right. And it's pretty disturbing that they just instinctively view. You know, if you want to get into an argument with a liberal on Twitter, don't mention ISIS, mention Hobby Lobby. The Hobby Lobby is way more evil to them than ISIS.
Well, can I expand that? I agree with that, and I also think he sees himself as not the president of all Americans, but the president of all liberals. Not just here, but abroad. I mean, he's the president of the entire UN America-hating community. He is the president of everybody who dislikes the right worldwide.
That's a good point. The whole transnational progressive movement. That's a great point.
Yeah.
Since we were talking about David Spade and making you feel better about being younger than him, I think that's a good point to transition into this Bob Costas thing.
Yes.
Very few people. I write on Free Radical Network. I've written about some really weird stuff and gotten into the weeds. I don't know that I've been in this situation. You wrote about Bob Costas's dye job.
Yeah, it's bad. I was watching, I guess, Sunday Night Football, and he came on, and I was just shocked because his hair was so black I couldn't believe it. You know, I've never seen anybody with hair that black. And I looked, I was like, how old is this dude? Because his face is just kind of looking almost gray, his face. And I checked it out, he's 62 years old, and that guy's hair is, oh my gosh, it's unbelievable. But it's weird because it just got me to thinking, because more and more guys are doing it, and he's like the worst example of it. Tom
Selleck on Blue Bloods does it as well.
That's true.
Yeah, he gets a lot of criticism for that.
Yeah, because even when they're like dyeing their eyebrows and stuff, it's like, all right, reel it back.
Come on.
Yeah. We know we used to watch you in the early 80s, dude. We know you don't look like this anymore. Yeah, and I was just thinking about how bad he looked, And just wondering, and also too, he has that kind of boyish mop top hairdo, which doesn't help because it just makes him look silly and it makes him look old. It accentuates his age. I remember seeing, and this was, gosh, I was in high school, visited LA once where everybody's always getting surgery and stuff like that. And I remember some woman that I met out there hanging out in the college area of Westwood. And she was probably, I don't know, at the time she looked ancient because I was just this punk 18-year-old, but she was probably like late 40s, something like that, which I am now. But she had this really long, like yellow blonde ponytail going down to her butt. And hanging out with all these college kids. And I'm like, what are you doing? Because all it did is make her look 20 years older than she actually was. It's like you would look like a nice, attractive woman if you kind of acted your age. And it just got me to thinking. I know I had worked for a company in Scottsdale. I live out in Arizona, and Scottsdale is kind of the more she town, and I worked for a company out there, and I realized, because I started going at least a little gray in my early 30s, and at the time I worked with all these executives who were in their 50s, and not one of them had any gray hair. And I was like, what the heck? What is wrong with you people? And I was just wondering if it's just me thinking that that's kind of odd, but it's turning into the norm where everybody wants to look like they're in their mid-30s, and I don't understand it.
The thing that I really liked about the piece, and it's interesting because of just, it's not the rote conservative topic. It's not something that you're trying to pound more issues into our heads. We need to be talking about ISIS every second of every day. So it's always nice to go to a conservative website and not read something about politics for a change. But you did manage to sneak in one of the most, the best quotes out of all of King of the Hill. That was beautiful.
Yes, and that's him saying, Hank Hill saying, because Luann, his stepdaughter, is trying to convince him to maybe dye his hair, because even Ronald Reagan did it, and he said, if Ronald Reagan dyed his hair, and I'm not saying that he did, but if he did, it was only to show his strength to the communists, which just one of my favorites.
Yeah!
Hank Hill, yeah.
Exactly.
And I don't know, I was just kind of wondering about this whole youth culture thing, because I look at the people who are like the coolest people in popular culture now. A couple of them are Bill Murray, who he has not had any, actors get at least some, an eye tuck or eye lift, whatever they call it. They get some work done, and he almost revels in having nothing done. He shows every year of his age and then some. And then the Dos Equis dude is the other guy who is just like, these are like the hippest guys around in pop culture. Why are guys still trying to look like they're 30 when they're not?
And Betty White.
Yeah, Betty White's another one. It's just like people who look their age have like an authenticity. And I was just wondering, more and more I see, and part of it too is I live in the Phoenix area, and we've always been kind of like a mini LA in a way, because LA is the biggest, the biggest city kind of near us, and LA is all about youth all the time. And so some of their trends carry over to the Phoenix area. And I've noticed it more and more among men, and I'm like, why does nobody have gray hair? It's just kind of freaking me out. Because I just look back to my dad's generation, and they would never dream of, well, I don't know, I guess they had the Grecian formula, but all it did is turn your gray hair to look kind of this weird brownish, grayish something or other. I don't know, but everybody knew you were dyeing your hair. Maybe comb-overs were bigger back then, but I don't know. I just thought it was odd, and I do, too, like to deal with non-political topics because I can't make everything political or I'd go crazy.
Well, that makes me think, too, though, about the number of advertising, and you're the perfect person to talk about this, the number of advertising trends that have shown older people, because the boomers are aging and they're into their best consumption years. Then you have this whole new generation of, these kids, the millennials that are coming up that are massive as well. Is there some kind of dynamic play there that Costas might be trying to forestall? Because we did see plenty of people going gray and being that way and celebrating, maybe not in Hollywood necessarily, but in advertising for sure, this whole trend of having older spokespeople, and I'm not just talking about the reverse mortgage ads. I mean, all sorts of things. But you've seen that. But we all were always told that since the boomers were going to age better and gracefully, and they were going to grasp everything that whole Dennis crap. What is the actor's name that does the retirement?
Dennis Farina?
No, does the retirement commercials. Easy Rider. Come on.
Dennis Hopper.
Dennis Hopper commercials where he's talking about.
Figure that out because he's been dead for like 2 years now. So
okay, but see the.
So is Dennis Farina, but it's the dead guys.
She also hasn't watched TV. She also hasn't watched TV for about 2 years, which is
that means he's really gray now.
All green, mold,
we had that sort of, in your face. The boomers aren't going to take it lying down. We're going to go. We're not, grow old gracefully. Screw that. We're going to, go kicking and screaming and doing whatever we want. But now we've got this whole millennial generation that's eventually, reaching adulthood and becoming influences in the culture. And I thought it was a very interesting place for Bob Costas to find himself in the middle of those two generations, not really able to navigate that very well effectively.
Yeah, that's true. And also, I just personally dislike Costas, so I can't forgive him even any barber issues that he has. I can't forgive anything because he drives me crazy.
Well, yeah,
but it was just so jarring to see that hair because at least the guy must be a multimillionaire. Get a decent somebody to touch that up. Add a little bit of gray in there.
Right. Yeah. It's like, don't you have a mirror? And the thing is, you're distracting me from whatever it is you're saying because I'm focused on your hair, and now I'm pitying you.
Well, maybe that's
which I don't think is your objective. I don't think you wanted me to feel sorry for you. And and the people who have like way too much plastic surgery, you're like, you don't look young. I know you're not young, so trying to look 30, you're always going to fail at that. So you're setting yourself up for failure, and you're setting yourself up for me just pitying you. Can't take you seriously.
Leslie, you brought up something that was very important. We're going to transition from this in just a second, but you brought up a very important point. If people are paying attention to Bob Costas' hair, if they're paying attention to the hair color, they aren't paying attention to the moronic stuff that Bob Costas might otherwise be spewing about, a billion other different topics. And the guy takes that, he violates millions and millions of Americans every Sunday night, by going in there and talking about stupid stuff, gun control, whatever, when it should be football.
I want to know if he's ready to ban elevators.
Because of that elevator. Oh, was it the elevator that caused that football player to hit his wife? It was the elevator's fault? Is that what you're saying?
Or maybe remove those metal bars around the sides that it looked like she might have hit. He doesn't want to ban elevator shoes because he's a diminutive little fellow.
Oh boy.
He's a tiny little fella.
Before we get letters and tweets from short people.
Short people of America,
We're already going to get that. I do want to. I want to move on to what you wrote today, which is back to politics. I'm sorry, but it's also sort of a middle issue here because this is one of the big things, and this is something that we've talked about a lot here on the Refinery. Is the fact that the left, we get caught moralizing. We get caught, like Rick Santorum is somebody who the left uses constantly to, wave the bloody shirt and say, look at these guys. They are trying to force their religion on everyone. They're, these are they are coming to change the way that you live, and they're going to enforce these rules to make it so that you have to live the way they say, not the way that you want to do it. But what the left is also doing at that very same time is you get people like Bloomberg banning smoking, banning trans fats, banning salt. California has there's a ban on foie gras. You can't sell it. Going through all those things. You went to one of a really large food freedom fest. That's a winning conservative issue, wouldn't you say?
Oh, it's a huge one. I always like looking at the issues too because the whole part of winning elections, it's as bummed as we get about losing elections. We usually only lose by a couple percentage points, and if we can hit the margins, that would make a big difference. A lot of people say, well, let's water down our message. That'll do it. I don't think that will do it, because you're going to make people stay home if you keep moving to the left. Instead, find these issues that are disruptive. Rand Paul is really good at finding disruptive issues, which is good, because we got to shake up the table a little bit if we're going to want 51% voting for our presidents. And this food freedom issue is a huge one, and it's something a lot of people don't even know about, but my wife and I will go to farmers markets a lot, and everybody is this tiny little entrepreneur making their one little product or selling vegetables from their little plot of land. They might be selling honey, they might be selling some specialty butter that's, not all processed and things like that. But they're all tiny little entrepreneurs who are there not to get rich, but to make a living, definitely. But they want to eat local. They want all their food coming from local sources. They want to shake the hands with the people who are, providing the meat or the vegetables that they're going to eat. And these people are being absolutely crushed by governmental regulations and processing, because they will make their own cheese, totally sterile, using traditional methods that have been going on in Europe for, say, 2,000 years, and the USDA is saying, nope, you didn't irradiate it or whatever the heck they require for that particular product. And you have federal SWAT team style raids into these little kind of what seem from the outside like little hippie farms, all organic, and you have federal raids going in there with guns drawn and destroying all their crops and products because they didn't get processed by USDA or whatever. And it has turned a lot of these people who would be kind of natural constituency for the left, it's turned a lot of them not into conservatives necessarily, but definitely libertarian.
And that's something, I'm sorry, I just want to say,
yep.
we don't talk about these issues enough at all. It is something that's infuriating to me that instead we decide that we want to focus on pounding the table on why the left is wrong on immigration reform, or try and yell and scream and kick about some other issue, but we don't promote the sort of, as you said, disruptive issues that can actually get us people. Instead, we decide that we want to do what's comfortable and what's safe and what we know is always going to get a ton of likes and tons of retweets, saying, well, Obama is bad. Here's my post on why Obama is bad and why he's a bad guy.
+1, retweet, reshare, reblog, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I loved it when you did that post, JD.
I was feeling really bad about myself, and I needed the likes so that I could go on living and fulfilled as a blogger. But actually, Andy, we should probably have you say something about this, because this is kind of the whole shtick of the party of choice. There's a reason why you're trying to take choice back, and this is what the left does to remove choice.
Oh yeah, I always thought our main line. If I could get every conservative in America to say this line as a lead-in to their argument on any issue, then you can branch out from there. We'd win, and that line is this: I want to control my own life, not yours. That is conservatism. The only reason to ever become, and I was speaking up in Greeley yesterday, and I was talking to this group, and I said, guys, the only reason to ever become a liberal Democrat, take it from a former one, is one word: control. And somebody might say, well, wait a minute, I'm pro-choice. No, they're pro-choice Republicans. You become a pro-choice Democrat because you want to control pro-lifers. You want to force them to pay for your choices, your personal choices. Well, but I believe in education. No, we all believe in education. You only become a liberal Democrat on education if you want to take everybody's tax dollars from people of all beliefs and erect public schools that teach only one side and force people to have to go to those. Well, I believe it. The thing is, every single issue, they believe in control. And here's the thing: people hate to be controlled. The left is absolutely addicted to control. People hate to be controlled, and we are not laying a glove on them on their biggest weakness. We're leaving it alone.
We're failing at messaging that. We're failing at it.
Yeah, I go after it. And it's easy. It's very easy. You can change people. You can turn people around so quickly by showing how we're the party of choice, they're the party of control.
And really, the more it goes, something at that Netroots conference that I attended and wrote up was this comedy panel they had, which was, well, it was unintentionally funny. It was, but everything they talked about was all the jokes you weren't allowed to tell, basically. And the left has transitioned from liberal, in the classic meaning of the term, to this austere, moralistic, puritanical cult of ever-changing morality. They are the moralizers. You know, on the right, it's kind of, hey, do what you want, and it's just like completely reverse the roles. And they are, as I look at it, the left, they are the preacher in Footloose, telling everybody to stop dancing. They're having too much fun.
John, can you tell me anyone on the right who is as controlling as a leftist environmentalist?
No, absolutely no one. And even those who might try to exercise some control, like in social conservatism or something, they're not taken seriously. They don't really win elections, and nothing they try to push is written into law. I think a lot of it, just like demanding people bake cakes for gay weddings and things like that, it really is. Not only am I right, I want to make you, bow down to me and kiss my ring, basically. Whereas if somebody disagrees with me, first off, I'm used to it, and I don't care. I'm awesome. I'm sorry if you have a problem understanding that, but I have no interest in getting somebody to follow my religious beliefs or, anything else in the public square. I can have a conversation with them. I can try to, proselytize them on politics or religion or ethics or my favorite sports team, but I have no interest in telling the government, you need to make them do what I want them to do. And that's the entire left that's their purpose. That's their reason.
I'm going to tell you that what you should do and what you shouldn't do, but you, the left, tend to be telling me what I must do and must not.
Yeah.
I'm making recommendations and suggestions and trying to persuade, and the left is forcing and restricting.
And they want to lock you up if you don't do what they say.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that somehow, and this is something that we've constantly struggled with here on the Refinery, is how is it that people like Rick Santorum get pigeonholed as that, and people like Michael Bloomberg don't? How is it that Michelle Obama? We do see some stories about how miserable the lunch selections are for kids, and kids revolting against the school programs. But how is it that we haven't been able to do to them what they have done to us? It can't just be the media. You can't just tell me, oh, it's the media that has caused them to be successful and for us to fail. We have YouTube. We have so many. The democratization of media has gotten to the point where we should be able to make these cases in a nonpartisan way and make these people look like the controlling, awful fascists that they actually are. Why? I mean, from a marketing standpoint, why is it that we can't get that marketing job done?
Well, a lot of it transcends politics and ideology. I know that Ace over at Ace of Spades blog, which is one of my, I was going to say daily reads, but I usually check in several times a day, but he's talked about it a lot, about how it's even more based than ideology or political labels. It's almost a tribal thing. And I think a lot of it is you are not of my tribe. When they see Rick Santorum talking in, let's just call it Christianese, I'm a Christian and I'll go to church, and I'm sure that influences the word choices I have. If somebody, says, oh, you did a great, congratulations on your promotion, I want to say, yeah, I'm really blessed. Just these tiny little indicators that I don't even think about identify. A Christian would see me and go, oh, okay, he's one of us. And a more secular, urban young professional would go, blessed. Ugh. It's just these tiny little indicators, and I think part of it is that person's not on my team, so I'm going to mock everything that they say. Because Rick Santorum, I don't think he's a good messenger at all. He always looks like his face always looks to me like he's smelling something bad. He always just has this kind of look on his face like, I disapprove. But a lot of what he says in his policy prescriptions aren't terrible. They aren't objectionable. He's not saying, and that's why I'm going to convert the entire nation to Catholicism. He doesn't do all the things he's mocked as doing. Michelle Bachmann doesn't either. But she's other. She's of that other tribe. And part of it with like Michael Bloomberg trying to ban smoking in huge big gulps, a lot of that is just pure class issues. It's people who go to Whole Foods and consider themselves sophisticated will look at that and say, oh, that's kind of déclassé to be guzzling down a big gulp or smoking. Who smokes anymore? That's just gross. And so a lot of the reason they don't get pushback is it's like a class thing. I don't smoke, so yeah, and it bugs me when I go to a bar and people smoke, so yeah, ban it.
You know, I like to bond with the people at Whole Foods. I go there carrying around a basket of deodorant that I hand out.
Okay, I go to Whole Foods. I drink kombucha. I'm one of those people.
You
so,
sick.
Yes, I know. I'm a terrible person.
Can I offer a quick answer to what you were saying? Okay, because it's when I offer it. It's the reason. Why do we get branded whereas they don't? Look, the left is far more controlling than the right. It's not even close. And we lose people. We lose them as when they are kids. That's when we lose them, and then they keep them. And here's why, in my opinion. It is because our 5% is the kids' 100%. And what I mean is this. Republicans or conservatives want to control people's lives in about Packers rule. I'm a Wisconsin boy. I love Packers. Republicans and conservatives want to control people's lives, want to limit their choices in, at the very most, 5%. Yeah, we're playing you this week. At the very most, 5% of their life. Okay? A few social issues, that's it. Democrats, liberals want to control people's lives in at least 95, probably more like 99% of their lives. When you talk about every single possible way that they try to control people's lives, okay? Even telling a place that they can't build in this state because it's not a union state. I mean, 44-ounce sodas, it goes on and on. Here's the difference, guys. In that 95% of areas where we give freedom, young people don't own any of that. They don't own businesses. They don't create jobs. They don't compete on the world stage. They don't deal with the fact that a higher minimum wage crushes our ability to compete internationally. They don't deal with water rights, grazing rights, all these kinds of. They don't deal with any of that. They only own one thing: their bodies. That's all they own, and that is all they see us as controlling. And by the way, I'm a social conservative. Okay, you guys know that, but I believe, like I always say, look, Jesus and the apostles never tried to make non-Christians live like Christians. They offered and modeled their beliefs. They never tried to force them or enforce them upon others, unless it was something like, I'm sure they would with something like abortion, where one choice is taking away another choice. But you see, we lose the young because our 5% is their 100%. And once they're lost, they come to trust the Democrats on everything else. And that is why they hate us. They see us as disapproving of them, wanting to tell them how to live their lives. And because of that, they want us to lose the debate. And so with somebody like Rick Santorum, they will brand us, the entire right, as being Rick Santorum. But with somebody on the left, where you can have a million extremists on the left, every one of them is an extremist that doesn't represent the left. Does that make sense?
We're going to have to come up with someone other than Rick Santorum to beat up on. He's sort of our totem of, the classic conservative boogeyman. Poor Rick. But yeah, Ace actually had an article about this last week when he talked about the liberals talk about their nice things like trees and equality and all of that, and we need to adopt some of those as our nice things too. Yes, trees are nice, and yes, equality is nice, and the conservative message supports trees and equality in this way. Because right now, it's seen that liberals are the party of trees and equality, and conservatives are the party of fracking and smokestacks and nuclear bombs. Because we deny the goodness of trees and equality.
Well, smokestacks and nuclear bombs are a lot more entertaining. You have to admit that.
Right.
Well, heck yeah.
with that, I want to sort of wrap things up. We're 6 minutes over for the show, but I mean it's been really really great to have X John on with us. John Gabriel, thank you so much for being here. Everybody needs to go and make sure that if you haven't already, go and do it. Everybody's following him on Twitter, X John, at X John, and go and check out Ricochet. It's great. The content there is always awesome, and the Party of Choice was featured over there one time, so that was pretty cool too. Is there anything, any last words, anything that you want to hit before we wrap things up there, John?
Nothing for me other than thanks for having me on. Had a great time.
Awesome. We would love to
Thank
have
you so
on
much.
again. Yeah, great discussion. It's kind of like you watched all of our videos before coming on, because
I know.
basically everything that we always talk about is you were on point, so it was really great to have you on, and it was our pleasure.
And Ace of Spades fangirl here too as well. So by the way,
All right.
we talk about Ace like every week. So
Okay.
All
Thanks
right.
so much.
Yep.
You bet. My pleasure.
Thanks, John.
All right. Talk to you guys later.
we'll be
Later.
back next week, next Tuesday at 8:30 Central. Thanks, guys.